Chrysler was at one point in time one of the most beloved car brands in America, selling record numbers of cars every year, designing iconic vehicles, and making cultural icons overnight. It seemed as if Chrysler was the future of American car making. Yet in 2025, well, they sell one minivan. So what happened? But before we get into the confusing destruction of Chrysler, make sure to like and subscribe. The early years of Chrysler is as American as it gets. After all, the brand has been around for 100 years. Starting in 1925 by a man named Walter Chrysler. There is a lot of history between the 80s and the 20s, but I'm gonna leave all that out for time purposes. The 80s. What a decade. Chrysler would be a troubled company releasing bomb after bomb. The company teetered on failure until a couple of guys in a boardroom thought up a great new segment, the minivan. Sure, your station wagon can carry lots of people, and sure they look alright, but what if you could carry even more people and even more comfortably? Enter the Dodge Caravan. Essentially, the first ever widely produced minivan in the entire world, and people loved it. As Chrysler would start to rise in profit again, returning stability as a brand, for now. The next major turn of events for Chrysler would be the merger between Mercedes and Chrysler. Mercedes would purchase Chrysler from a stock swap and would make some of the biggest changes in the entire car industry. From the purchase, Jeep would become their own standalone brand, selling cars under the now famous name and badge. Plymouth, one of the oldest and most revered American auto brands, would be axed from the purchase as well. But the first major win for Chrysler post-Mercedes purchase would be the PT Cruiser. Oh my, maybe one of the ugliest cars ever made. Despite the hideous lines, the horrid front grille, and nearly everything else, despite the horrible reliability, despite the all-around dinginess of the car, the PT Cruiser was huge. Maybe one of the most beloved American cars of all time, especially in the 2000s. The PT Cruiser sold 1.3 million units worldwide. 1.3 million. That is mind-blowing, especially for an experimental period piece like the PT Cruiser. The 2000s were a different world for automakers. Notice how you have actually never seen one of these on the road, by the way. After the major success of the PT Cruiser, Chrysler would find themselves doing very well. The budding crossover and SUV market caught the eye of Chrysler, so the brand sought out to fulfill this segment with the brand new Chrysler Pacifica in 2004 and the Chrysler Aspen. Two very ugly cars, but they were based off of platforms already prominent cars from Dodge. What a great mix of reliability, by the way. A Dodge meets a Chrysler, an absolute juggernaut of check engine lights.
Uh-oh, tape must have fallen off. There, problem solved.
Chrysler's biggest success yet was nearly here. In 2005, the Chrysler 300 would release, becoming one of the most iconic American cars of the past 20 years. The 300 was the first Chrysler product to have a V8 since 1989, and people loved it. After all, it introduced the company to the Hemi. The design was oddly similar to the Rolls-Royce, and whether or not it was intentional or not, it sold very well. The sports trim of the 300 would include the now famous Hemi V8, which at the time was an almost no-name engine. The 2000s were an incredible time in Chrysler history, but something very troubling was brewing in the US financial world. The end of the 2000s would see the end of many different American car brands, and Chrysler's decline could be seen at the start of the Great Recession. Brands like Hummer, Pontiac, Saab, Oldsmobile, and others would cease to exist, and Chrysler was not in too great of a place themselves. In 2009, Chrysler would file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, the 9/11 of the Chrysler story, if you will. And for a while, Chrysler just floated in nothingness, not really doing much, but
he's just standing there, menacingly.
The US Treasury would invest $12.5 billion into the company and made back $11 billion after the shares were sold, and Fiat would buy up the rest. This brought up the troubling Fiat-Chrysler merger, the sign of the end times. But before we get into the catastrophe of the 2010s for Chrysler, I want to tell my viewers something. If you guys like these weekly videos, leave a like and subscribe. Anyway, keep watching, I guess. The 2010s, D-Day for Chrysler. This was the make or break moment. The entire automotive world was in a completely different place in disarray, and where we will start this section of the video is with the sport utility vehicle, otherwise known as an SUV. As my viewers may know, the SUV was becoming a very big deal in America in the 2010s. Gone were the days of sedans and coupes. The statement car or even everyday car was now the SUV. Chevy, Ford, GMC, and other American companies were all coming out with their own SUVs, and each seeing incredible success success and money, lots of money from these SUVs. So Chrysler looked at the new landscape of automobiles and the free money at their fingertips and said, nah, we don't need to make one of these, and instead made a budget sedan, the Chrysler 200. A cheap, junky, unreliable, and unremarkable sedan 10 years too late. If you've ever seen a Chrysler 200 in real life, you know what pieces of garbage they really are. No offense to Chrysler 200 owners, by the way. The 200 would last only 2 years and would very much bomb. Around the same time that the company pushed out the 200, they would also repurpose the Pacifica name. No, not for an SUV, the logical solution, and no, not for a crossover. They put the name on a minivan. Yes. When all the stars seem to align for Chrysler, they choose to take the name from an old crossover and smack it onto a minivan. Damn it. This company's obsession with minivans needs to be studied. The Fiat era was a rough one for Chrysler, not only sales-wise, but also in reliability. The reliability department was always iffy on Chrysler, and besides what the comments will say, no, I'm not a GTA Online Gen Z tard, and I do know a thing or two about cars. And one of the things I know is that Fiats are garbage. You can buy anything from Fiat and would break down on the way home from the dealer. The quality and customer satisfaction was below bad, and it was safe to say that people were no longer wanting Chryslers. The end of the 2010s were yet another very scary moment for the brand. The 2020s, the true death of a brand. Chrysler discontinued every other car they made besides for the Pacifica. Even the 300 was dead, which was a car that many people loved and a very good seller, mind you. Chrysler sells one car in the year 2025. So what happened? Why did this at one point member of the big three American auto brands become a global laughingstock? Well, incompetence. That is the word of the day, ladies and gentlemen, incompetence. There were countless times that Chrysler had an opportunity to make a car which fit the market trends of the time, but they just didn't. Questionable financial decisions and economic problems sure didn't help, but that still isn't an excuse. Brands like Ford were in a pretty rough place as well, but they're doing better than ever now. Well, kinda, but you still get the point. Chrysler's future is an uncertain one, as the company has said numerous times that they will be a fully electric group by 2028. A new concept car was also unveiled, of course a full EV because car companies love to make cars that will fail and lose money, the Chrysler Airflow. Lord almighty, why are EVs named so poorly? But the car looks alright, I guess. It is the rear of a Dodge Hornet and an Audi SUV. I wouldn't be shocked it was literally based off of the Hornet because of the Stellantis connection. But let's wind this thing down, shall we? Fall of Chrysler is a confusing story, based off of very unlucky timing in the economy, reliability issues, and poor leadership. Chrysler became a laughingstock. Whenever they would make a hit and a good decision, they would make a company-shattering decision right after. Never creating a mainstream crossover would, however, be the nail in the coffin for Chrysler in my opinion, however, especially in the 2010s. The Pacifica name could have gone to a modern crossover for the brand. Who knows? Maybe the Airflow will be a great EV and rival the Tesla. Maybe it will bomb, but I'm expecting it to bomb. But who knows? Thank you guys for watching.